So my name's Tucker Martin, and I've been at Rising for on and off for a long time. It's probably since the beginning, but really more intimately for the last couple of years. Married to Pam Martin, a lot of y'all know, who did a video a couple weeks ago and sings a lot of times up on stage. And we've got 3 kids who are often running around and climbing on things. You know, one of the most challenging ones for me that we've gone over so far has been the idea of solitude. That one was tough for me. I'm a big extrovert. I'm always trying to keep people around me at all times, and being in solitude was difficult. I got the opportunity to practice that one specifically in a recent trip to Colorado, and we got to kind of really just sit back and experience of like the awe and the wonder of the magnitude of God in the mountains. That was really cool. Biblical fasting is abstaining for food to seek the Lord. That's all it is. There's examples all throughout the Bible of people fasting. Fasting was, in historic context, like fasting was something that people did all the time, and as a result, there's not a ton of practical advice for how to fast in the Bible because everybody kind of already knew how to do it. But you see fasting in Jesus when he was preparing for ministry, he fasted. When you see there's examples of people fasting when they are in times of grief or distress, they fast in those times. There's people who fast for wisdom or for answers. In our culture, we're all about balance and sustainability, and we talk about that a lot. But fasting really isn't that. Fasting is a heart posture that says nothing else matters. This is the most important thing. I'm sold in all the way, and I'm going after the heart of God. If you remember the story of Gideon, you know, Gideon's leading the army of the Israelites against the Midianites. He's got with him this pretty vast army, right? He's got like 22,000, or I don't know, like 25,000, something like that when he originally started out strong. And God, little by little, pared down the size of his army. God was removing every opportunity from Gideon and from the Israelites to take credit for themselves. God wanted all of the glory for himself. He wanted all the honor for himself. He didn't want anybody to say it was because of my hand that we won this victory. Victory was the Lord's. Victory belonged to him and to him alone. And fasting to me is a personal example of we fast to get ourselves out of the way. It is kind of a personal example of paring down from multiple thousands to 300 to bring yourself to a place where like God has to show up or we're gonna die. You know, like God's got to show up or it's not gonna happen. You know, fasting, you know, in the practical sense, fasting makes you tired. When you don't eat, you're tired. You don't have a lot of energy. You don't have the same level of fight in you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and to make something happen. You're forced into a place of rest. You know, we've talked about celebration. Like when you fast, you're pushed into a place of celebrating and being thankful to God for what you have because you realize it in a more tangible way. When your prayer life, you know, gets ignited. We fast to get we fast to get ourselves out of the way. So for those of you who know me, I'm all about practicality. Like I've got to put something into practice if I'm gonna even try. If it stays up in like the heady theological space, like I'm out. It's got to be something we can actually do. And so with that in mind, let's talk about some practical steps for fasting. Like if you've never fasted before, maybe here's a few things to keep in mind. Start small. There's no need to like go out of the gate and try to do this, you know, be like super spiritual person and do, you know, some kind of 21-day, you know, marathon fast, right? If you've never fasted before, like maybe consider fasting lunch and taking that lunch hour and praying and seeking the Lord. Maybe once you've done that a couple times, maybe do a day-long fast and really just use that time to seek God and pray for wisdom, pray for direction, worship him. You're really doing, when you're fasting, you're really doing all the other spiritual disciplines that we've already learned about just while you're fasting. So use it as an opportunity to really engage in the other stuff. And we talked a little bit earlier in the video about people fasting for different reasons. People fasting in worship, or fasting in repentance, or fasting for direction. I think probably the most common one is fasting for direction and for answers of some sort. Most of the people who I know that have fasted or do fast, if you ask them, like, hey, what are you fasting about? They usually have something very like tangible that they can point to, and it's like, hey, I'm trying to get victory in this certain area. And you've got, a lot of people are fasting for some sort of deliverance or breakthrough in some kind of area, right? And so that goes back again biblically to the disciples coming up against the boy with seizures, and they prayed for him and weren't able to heal him, but Jesus walked up and delivered him. And they asked what that was about, and Jesus said, well, this only comes out with prayer and fasting, right? And so a lot of people end up fasting for some form of breakthrough, right, that they're not getting otherwise through prayer. For me, I don't ever often really know why I fast. I get the impression from the Lord that like he wants to lead me in a fast, and then we usually go through some kind of debate process where I say, I don't really want to do that right now, God. This isn't good timing. The Super Bowl is coming up. New Year's is right around the corner. Somebody's got a birthday. We're eating and celebration all go hand in hand, and there's always a reason not to do it. And so usually there's some kind of period where I'm arguing with God about not wanting to fast, and he, it's kind of like, well, you'll get over it here shortly, and then I do, and then we have an argument over the timeline and the parameters, and then I fast, not often not knowing what fruit God's going to bring out of it. But I can say that for me is that each time that God's led me through a fast, it's been in a time of intimacy that I've never had while eating. I've had breakthrough in areas that I've never been able to get. Years back, I really struggled with like compulsive eating and with being addicted to food and using food as an emotional crutch. And it's kind of hard to maintain that addiction while fasting. And God used that as a tool to break me of that bondage. There's been other times where I've fasted, and then kind of shortly following a fast, some kind of massive life event has happened. So when we were walking through some of the medical stuff with our kids, on 2 occasions, God led me through a fast, and then immediately following that, there was some massive life-changing events that happened, and I really believe that God used that time of seeking Him and going after Him to prepare my heart. And there was another time that I really got into a bad place emotionally and spiritually. I probably was depressed at some level, and really like believing things about God that weren't true, and believing that He was not good, that He was not true to His word and to His promises based on the life circumstances around me. And God led me through a fast, and through that fast, like, reconnected His heart to mine and showed me how, showed me His goodness, showed me how good He was. I have never fasted and not seen huge things happen. If you think about this, there's the story of Esau and Jacob in the Bible, and there's this, within the stories, there's a part where Esau, who's kind of an avid hunter, more of an outdoorsman kind of guy, comes into the house, and he's famished. He's really hungry, and Jacob had just gotten done making a meal, and Esau asked Jacob for some of the soup, I think it was, and Jacob sells Esau the soup for his birthright, for Esau's birthright. So Esau gives up his birthright, his inheritance, for this bowl of soup, and he gave that up at the cost of his physical inheritance, which actually was a pretty big one. It's a pretty big one. And I guess just with reference to fasting, like, I don't want us as a church, and I don't want me as an individual to lose out on a spiritual inheritance because I'm unwilling to give up a meal or a couple of meals. The benefits are too great, and that sacrifice is really like not so big that I can't avoid it. So I'd, Rising, if you want to fast with me, like, I'd love to fast with you. And if you want any more information on it, like, there's a lot more in the Bible to be learned, and there's certainly books and other resources out there by people who have a lot more experience and wisdom and understanding and insight than I do that I'd be happy to share with you if you felt so inclined. Thanks.